Hi guys, my name is Megan and today I've got some monster romance recommendations for you. Alright, so today we are talking all about monster romance books, or, books where a character falls in love with a monster, or a monster falls in love with a human character, or a monster falls in love with another monster. Please note that this recommendation video is not for those under 18. A lot of these books are very explicit. So I'm just putting that out there right now before we start. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, so the first book I'd like to recommend for you guys is The Witch's Wolves, but I really enjoyed this book. This one follows a witch character who's been thrown out of her town because, they called her a witch and they were going to kill her, a whole bunch of other not fun stuff. And somehow she stumbles upon these two werewolves who take her in and they kind of all fall in love, and it's just a lovely poly romance, but it's also really great feature of neurodivergence, bisexual characters, and it's just a lovely romance, and it's so short, and it's just, there's so much emotion packed into it, and I love these two werewolves. They're both very funny and not your typical werewolves, because they're mostly wolf, but also kind of humanoid, and it's just, they're lovely. Alright, so next up is Planet Barbarians. This one is getting a lot of attention over on Book Talk as well as the Bookstagram community and here on BookTube. It's basically about blue aliens and these girls being kidnapped from Earth by other aliens and crash landing on this ice planet and being rescued by these strong blue aliens. And I will say that this first book and most of the series in general has a lot of rape, sex assault, and a lot of non-con in it and a lot of dubcon in it, so just be aware of that when you go into this book because it is a pretty blatant scene in the beginning of the book. After that you get into some tropes of not speaking the same language, survival, being two different species, and it's just a really interesting romance, especially considering that it's aliens and not technically monsters, but I'm still counting it as monster romance. It's a really interesting series and I really enjoyed the first one. So I also have probably a better description of this in my Bookstagram Made Me Read It video, which I will leave linked up in the corner. The next book I'd like to recommend is Fangs. So this is a really interesting take on vampires. So this follows a newly turned vampire who is kind of under the care of Ichi, who is another vampire character, but he's been around a lot longer. He also works for Fangs, which is the vampire wellness organization to make sure all the vampires are getting the blood they need and, having all of their mental health taken care of, and they're taking care of themselves, that kind of thing. And just kind of latches on to Ichi as a safety blanket, but then they also kind of start falling in love and they are trying to figure out what happened to En and why he was attacked. And I also really enjoy that this takes a really hard look at vampire mental health, because that's not something that you see a lot in any vampire books, especially considering that vampires are kind of immortal, and it deals with the aging of loved ones who want to remain human and not vampires. And it also takes into account what happens to vampires when they stop taking care of themselves and when they have suicidal ideations and suicidal thoughts. And it's just a really interesting take on vampire mental health and wellness. And again, I would not recommend this for anybody under 18 because it is explicit, and it's just a really good manga. Okay, next up is Girls Weekend. So this is one that I really enjoyed. This is about a bunch of elves who go to an orc nudist resort to get away for a weekend, and they have all of these little adventures, and they all kind of have this goal of getting laid over the weekend. But also they catch feelings for some of these guys, and it's a really lovely story. It's also very cozy, and I love the way that this world is built because it's very focused on normal everyday activities, but with magical creatures. And it's so well-rounded and so well thought out. And I loved all of these ladies and their orc partners, and they're just lovely. And then my last book is also set in the same world as Girls Weekend, and that is Morning Glory Milking Farm. Not going to go into too many details about this one because it is, you guys should definitely check out the book description for yourselves if you would like to read this one. But it's a really good urban fantasy romance with a really well-built world. I love the way that it's just everyday activities, but with mythical creatures, and it's just such an interesting world, and the characters are really great, and Rourke and Violet are just so cute. And this whole book is just, it's really good. It's questionable premise, but again, you should be the judge of that for yourself. But I really enjoyed it when I read it. So, alright, so that is it for my monster romance reading recommendation. Do you guys have any monster romances that you would recommend? Let me know down below. If you guys like this video, don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't already but would like to. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you'd like to follow me on social media for more bookish stuff, check out the links down below. Alrighty, bye guys!